The camel community is known for relishing a challenge. They don't shy away from difficult, technical, and punishing tracks. So for the first race of the season, they went all in. That's right, we're at the Nurburgring. And we'll see who can reach the checkered flag as we get ready to watch round one of the Camel GT series. And you'll see it all live here on the Global SimRacing Channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is IMSA driver Joey Atterbury. Behind the scenes is our director Robert O'Brien, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. If you haven't heard of the Nurburgring, where have you been? Let's head to our track guide to help get you up to speed. Welcome to the Nurburgring. Nicknamed the Green Hell by three-time F1 world champion Sir Jackie Stewart, it is often regarded as the greatest test of a driver anywhere on the planet. Just looking at the stats will tell you why. While the combined version holds a swath of choices, they all include 100-plus corners and range between 14 and 16 miles, or 24 to 26 kilometers in length. Add to that roughly 1,000 feet in elevation change over the course of the lap, and it's easy to see what's so impressive about it. Simply memorizing the course is over half the battle for drivers, let alone being fast. It goes without saying that the Nordschleife portion is dangerous. Many fast corners lack runoff, there's blind apexes everywhere, and in a couple cases, even modern cars will get airborne. The list of famous turns is pretty lengthy, but some of the more notorious are places such as fluke lots, miss hit miss, bravery corner, and of course, the ever iconic carousel. It's not just the places where you have to move the wheel to get attention too. The Dottinger Hoa stretches for more than 1.5 miles in length. However, that isn't even digging into the Grand Prix portion of the circuit. Much more open and safer in nature, it's no less challenging from a technical standpoint. Passing is still surprisingly hard in most cars, and corners such as the Schumacher S can spit you into the barrier if you don't respect the curbs. Events such as the 24 Hours of the Nürburgring offer drivers of many skill levels the chance to tackle this behemoth, and still draws gigantic grids to this day. Many race fans consider this the mecca of road racing, and any driver who is able to push the limits here often quickly garners their respect. Well, there you see a little introduction, but we have to remember here, Joey, that this is essentially the longest version of the track with the 24-hour version, including the whole GP and the Nordschleife. So this is going to be the Ultra Challenge.
Ultra Challenge indeed. Like we're seeing here, 15 plus miles to make it a single lap around this place. And I think maybe only our saving grace with this Camel GT series and this layout is it does at least go through the GP circuit first before we go out onto the Nordschleife there. And with so many cars on track and the two different classes, it's going to be really mixed up. We shouldn't see too much lap traffic today just based on how long the lap is, but passing's going to be super tough. The bumps are always a big deal, and just getting side by side with somebody not on the GP circuit is always tough to do. And the other thing you got to remember is not everybody knows each section perfectly. They might be really fast in one and a little bit off pace in the other, and that can cause some big wrecks out there.
Yeah, it's something that takes years and years of experience to really get a mastery of this place, and not everyone's going to be really up to snuff, but that's what makes this such a fascinating race, no doubt. Speaking of which, let's take a look at the driver standings. We have fast forward very far in time, it appears, as Anti-Lapista has taken the championship at the end of last season by about 32 points over Sintez Galindo. It was a pretty close fight down in the lower half of the top 10. There you can see guys like Jungbluth Clapper, Trangrade, Martin Krejcik all came within about 6 points of each other in the end. But up at the front, it seemed to really separate by the end of the season. We also have the GTO standings, which wound up a little closer at the top.
A little bit closer, and if you remember, it was Yuka Leskala claiming that win and Javier Del Olmo chasing him down there. And then you have Reed Miller, Ian Haycock's always a great story, Timothy Vaughn, Doug Cloud, Hideki Koivisto, Mark Ole, Jamie Hummelsmith, and Andreas Schuster. And looking at timing and scoring, Joe, I see a lot of familiar names here in round one.
That's good to see that people have come back to try and compete once again. But what are they competing on here? Well, it is race 1 out of 12, but this one is not a timed race like they normally do. This is 8 laps they'll run around here. So this is a lap-based race. No spare car, as always. And this place, it punishes. So you're probably going to suffer if you do have an incident, especially in the Nordschleife. A drive-through penalty at 17 incidents, disqualification at 25. Really, the only place we're expecting them to rack up those incidents is through the Grand Prix course, where they can have some off tracks and get away with it. But I'm not anticipating seeing many of them manage to get any sort of penalty due to those here, just because of the nature of the track. But we do have them out on the circuit during the warm-up, but qualifying has already taken place earlier this week. This is a bit of a different beast compared to before. And it is going to be relatively cool out there, just under 80 Fahrenheit. So thankfully, they should have some grip to help them out. Just a couple seconds left, and then qualifying will be up here as there is our starting grid for today. Hugh Haycox is on the pole with Theo Schleret in second next to him. Theo looking pretty good today. Let's see if he can translate that into a win. He'll have the likes of Ardo Iamaki behind him with Antti Lepisto. It's an all-Finn second row. Matthias Hovdal will start P5. Then you've got Laust Olsen in the 6th position and Timothy Vaughn starting from 7th. Ove Trangrade will wind up in P8. Aaron Humphrey in 9th, and top 10 will be rounded out by Fabian Jungbluth. Xavier Sanchez is 11th, followed by Michael de Turk in 12th. You've got Timothy Reed on the inside of the next row. Timu Toika, nicknamed Fat Timu, is going to be starting from 14th. Heitor Sintez Galindo, very poor qualifying today, all the way down in 15th. Krajcik will be P16, and Jukka Tolinen, another one we usually see a little bit higher up, starting from 17th today. Patrick Silvazzi, he'll be P18. Eduardo Roca, 19th, and Seamus Power then in 20th. Last couple will be Till Beme in 21st, Clayton McLeod, 22nd, and Richard Smits in 23rd. What about the GTOs, Joey?
In the GTO field, your pole sitter Jukka Leskala, followed by Roger Christensen. In 3rd place there we have Kurt Krum, followed with Mark Ole in the top 5. Ian Haycox, Andreas Schuster in the 6th spot. Javier Del Olmo, Doug Cloud, Kevin Parish, and Yori Giesen in the top 10. Daniel Repetto in the 11th spot. John Sippett in the 12th position. Adrian Zurita, Carlos Fonseca, Jamie Hummelsmith, and Edu Vila round out the 16 cars of the GTO field.
So this is actually a split, not something we get all that often in Camel, because they usually split at 55 drivers, well, 56 technically. So it takes a lot to show up. And well, as you'd expect, the Nurburgring brings them out in droves. And we'll see them try and compete here today with the top split, seeing 39 drivers out here. That tells you how many have arrived to try and take on the legendary challenge that is the ring. But we'll have a short pace lap here as we go past the Tourist Farten entry along the Dottie near Hoa. And then once they get up to the start line, then we will be on our way on the GP course. So I'm sure there's some nerves in and around the field here, Joey, because this is one that will test your mettle. And if you don't feel completely prepared, well, may the Lord have mercy on your soul.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. If you come into this racetrack unprepared, I think you're going to look for an early exit, probably lap 1. But I know that these drivers here at Camel take this stuff very, very seriously, but they also love the chaos out there on the racetrack. And once the green flag drops, I think we're going to see that.
Yeah, I agree. But Hugh Haycox is going to lead them to that green flag. He was kind of on and off last season with a bit of bad luck in there from time to time. Let's see if he's overcome that here today as the Porsche pace car peels in, gives control over. Ooh, there's some antsy drivers trying to go early, but Haycox is going to hold them. How long is he going to hold them, though? as they come up to the start-finish line. And there it is. Green flag is out. Very good jump from the number 5. Schlere's under threat immediately as Iamaki's trying to go up the inside, down into the Haug hook. He almost loses it under braking, but gathers it back together. They'll make it through the chicane, and they are out the other side. Let's go down to the GTOs.
GTOs are already underway, and Yuka Leskola got a huge jump over Roger Christensen, leading Kurt Krum, Mark Ole, and Ian Haycox in the top 5. Really single file as they cross the line. You're seeing the orange car dive down deep on the brakes there. I believe that was Javier Del Olmo trying to get it done in turn 1. No contact and promote him up a couple places to 6th.
Some bravery paid off, but he's going to need that bravery throughout the rest of the lap once they get to the Nordschleife as well. He's still sitting behind Ian Haycox in that bright green number 12, but Haycox is a little bit off the apex. Meanwhile, we jump on board with Mark Ole here, looking forward, trying to catch up to the likes of Kurt Krum. That's 3rd position in front of him. Someone behind having a little bit of an issue, almost going off track. I think that's Doug Cloud. He's going to lose a couple spots.
Yeah, I think Doug Cloud seems to be going back out there. He's in the 9th spot, and these cars are just working through the sectors for the very first time, and I think things are going to get really crowded here once they enter the Nordschleife.
Indeed. And up at the front of it, Hugh Haycox has pulled a massive gap already, 2 seconds, and they're already on the Nordschleife. There you can see behind him chasing Iamaki has got Lepisto at least an arm's length away, so he's not going to be much of a problem for his fellow Finn for the time being. Hovdal down in 4th has already overtaken Schlere. It's been a miserable start for the 8 car.
Something to notice about this racetrack and race car combination, especially with the GTP cars, is look at how bumpy this racetrack is, and these drivers are going to have to deal with it throughout this racetrack, and it can really upset the car in some nervous areas.
Ooh, something happened to Fabian Jungbluth. He's already taken a tow. Probably a good idea. If you have a wreck around here, it tends to cause big problems. No, it was not that. He lost connection, it appears. Well, that's certainly going to put him on the back foot.
Yeah, unfortunately, just all the way back to pit lane there, and I know that we're getting everything sorted out here, and to keep you up to speed in GTO, these cars are just kind of stretching it out. Leskola over Christensen, but they're putting about 1.5 seconds on the field already.
Indeed, and we'll want to see the... Whoa, big problem here. Back across the track for the 19. Till Bene is going to be able to avoid a major accident, thankfully, but that could have been a lot worse. And he gets away with it for now. I was going to say, it looks like we've already missed it. We would love to have seen the GTOs go over Flugplatz, because they actually get a little bit of air there as we come back live and plunging down through the lowest parts and into the valley of the racetrack here. We follow the number 10.
I'm pretty impressed with really this whole field. We saw, that one incident earlier, but look at how narrow this racetrack is. And these cars have such immense acceleration, and really through the high-speed stuff, they suck to the ground. There's no room for error around here.
Can confirm that Fabian Jungbluth did officially lose connection. He could maybe rejoin and actually still be on the lead lap. That's how long the laps are around here. Just he's going to have to get in very quickly from here. Hopefully that'll be the case, and he can try and scalp something out of the attrition that tends to rear its ugly head at this track. We're still watching the battle for third. Lepisto leading Hovdal, leading Schlere. Theo probably going to want to take up a couple of those spots, considering he started on the front row, but the slipstream having an effect as Hovdal manages to get side by side with Lepisto, and hopefully they'll be single file by the time they go through Moot Curve Bravery Corner, and indeed they are.
There's not very many places that you can go side by side and make a clean move. You kind of have to wait for these really long snaking straightaways, and Hovdal got that move done in a nice clean area, promote him up a spot.
Lepisto still holding back Schlere, and as the number 8 continues to try and recover his lost spots. He's going to have to be a little bit cleaner than he has been coming up the hill. He's using a good slipstream on Lepisto, but like you said, there's a lot of places where it's difficult just to try and get by. Christensen, who I'm not sure if I've actually seen him in a camel race before, seems to have a handle on the car because he's running in second behind Leskala, and we know that Yuko is a terribly fast driver.
Certainly indeed, and something else to note, that's Kurt Krum in the 3rd place, kind of hanging on to the back of these front two, but really impressed with Christensen and how he's able to just, like you said, hang on to the back of Yuka Leskala. We're used to seeing that green car dominate races out front in that Audi, and looks like he's got a challenger here today.
Absolutely. 1.3 seconds ahead of Krum, and they're barely halfway through the first lap. They come up to the carousel here as we ride on board. This will show you how bumpy it is through here, plunging into there, bounding around in this old-style suspension, and then pops you right back out.
Not only that, but you have to hit your marks every time, and if you misstep through an important section like that banked carousel, it'll spit you out faster than you know what to do with the car.
Oh, Theo Schlere's had a problem, and so has Hovdal. In fact, I think it started with Hovdal. Timothy Vaughn capitalized. He moved up to 4th in the GTPs, but Theo he did lose one position. He's down to 5th as we see them now stacked up behind because of that problem. Laust Olsen in that group. Ove Trangrade, Aaron Humphrey. Basically, they're all crunched together because of that little checkup.
Agreed. I'm seeing this here. It starts with about 3rd, 4th place and continues all the way down to 13th, 14th, and that is one big stack up here as it looks like we've got a big draft from Theo going down the straightaway. And once again, this is an area that you can get a pass done as long as you can catch him and get it done before you get to some of these narrower sections. And Joe, it looks like the aerodynamic, the wing angle is coming into effect here.
I wonder if it's the wing angle or the damage that Theo got and going off track to avoid the accident from Hovdal. We'll see if I can't see damage on the right-hand side where he hit from here. So, whoa, but he almost slips out from underneath him there, coming out of Hohenron and back onto the GP course. Doesn't lose the position, but the car looks pretty loose. Laust Olsen sizing him up into the first chicane, but not going to do it for now. Oh, in front of them, so that tire smoke was a big slide from Antti Lepisto as well.
This is a great race in GTP, especially we just completed a full lap here at the Nurburgring, and look at these cars are all stacked up, battling it out for really, what is this, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, all the way through 12th place on the racetrack. And here at the GP course, we might actually see him get a little bit aggressive and make some moves.
Yeah, this would be the place to do it. Schlere does not like the car as he loses control through the Dunlop hairpin. Everybody ducks underneath. Thankfully, does not cause another wreck as he was very close to the racing line, but he is going to fall way down. He's still losing positions all the way to 16th.
Yeah, and I know that Christensen back in GTO actually had an issue earlier in the lap and allowed Kurt Krum to catch him, and Kurt Krum actually just drafted right by our 2nd place Roger Christensen, so that puts the number 13 Audi up into 2nd place, and more importantly, Yuka Leskala has about maybe a second now on this battle for 2nd place.
They come up to the chicane. Looks like Krum almost able to hold him off, but ascend up the inside. Oh, but he's off the line. A little bit deep for Roger there, trying to come back at him. Kurt Krum going to see if he can retake that 2nd place, but nothing doing as they head down into Valvoline.
Yeah, it was really interesting because if you remember, Roger Christensen was right up there behind our leader, but like I said, that little mistake just kind of fell him back into Kurt Krum's lap, and look at how aggressive Kurt Krum is being out there. He wants to get up after that, and he doesn't want to let the leader go.
Down through the Dunlop hairpin, another mistake there. Not sure if that was a missed shift for Roger or what, but he just was suddenly incredibly slow off the hairpin, and now Kurt Krum is back into 2nd. This is all lost touch with Leskala just because of the back and forth. Let's listen. Let's see if maybe he just missed the shift or if there was something else. Yeah, that was it. That happens a lot in this Audi, and Kurt was not waiting around for any other better opportunities.
Certainly not. And I think, when an opportunity comes, pounce on it. And that's exactly what the 13 machine did.
Back onto the Nordschleife. And this is going to be critical here because you talked about them getting aggressive on the GP course. Now that Crum has the track position, Roger's going to have to play patient.
Agreed. And, lap one is a tough one to judge, the race based off of. But Roger Christensen certainly seemed to be fast in the Nordschleife section last lap. And he was able to really close that gap to Leskala. Now that he's had a couple problems, maybe in the tail half of that lap, we'll see if he feathers it a little bit or if he keeps it hammered down.
Timothy Vaughn had an accident and is dropping as the car is limping. And Laust Olsen did as well just now. That's into Defense Valley. Looks like he smacked the wall. He's able to get it back onto the track. How damaged is the car is the question.
Yeah, looks like I'm checking it out right now, and he just gets in really deep. And unfortunately, I think he got in too deep. You're going to see him hit the left side curb as you come down the hill into this brake zone right here. And that's what throws off the car. From there, no catching it and into the tire barrier.
We talk about the old school nature of some tracks. One thing that, to me, says old school is high curbs, and this place has them everywhere.
High curbs and close walls. If you notice, there's not much room between the edge of the racetrack, and holy smokes, Laust Olsen finds himself in the middle of a GTP battle.
A little bit of ghost contact between himself and Krajcik on top of things. They got to be careful here as Krajcik is going to pull Theo Schleret past. And yeah, I think Laust Olsen does not like how the car is handling from here and brakes a little bit, allows them through as they come up Kesselchen and into Stylstrecke. So it's been frantic out here. Usually you just want to worry about racing the track, and Krajcik gets tipped around by Schleret into the wall.
Another one of these front GTP cars having issues. We'll see if he's got any real damage on the car, but he's able to keep it going. And, we're looking at this Laust Olsen car. He had the right side damage, and this is already such a nervous, hair-raising racetrack. If that car isn't driving right, oh my gosh, he has his hands full.
Yeah, wonder if we'll see him pop into pit lane to take some repairs to try and get it in better condition, or if he feels like he can manage it until the end. So meanwhile, the 13 of Kurt Crum is at least keeping Roger at bay. He's not all over the rear bumper of Kurt. So that's the good news, but maybe that's intentional to try and just leave that little bit of space to make sure that he doesn't get collected in any issues that Kurt might have. They're still behind Leskala by about 1.3 seconds. Actually, Leskala must have had a mistake because he was a little farther ahead than that.
So this is the area of the racetrack last lap that Roger Christensen was really able to close on Yuko. I wonder if Yuko either doesn't know that section very well or is maybe nervous with the car. He's not happy with how it's acting, but you're right, Joe. It's really closed up second and third place to him.
There we look over the rear wing of Leskala now, back at Crum and Christensen. Ole might be able to be seen in the background, but he's a little ways back from them. And they currently work their way towards the braking of Stylstrecke as well. Top of the hill, where they now steer into the carousel after this. And yeah, they're in the background. You can just see Marc Ole in fourth. So they have not been able to drop the majority of the fields, and that's going to be bad news because the slipstream is so powerful in these boxy cars on the long straights.
It really is, and the best way I can describe it, I used to race some cars that were pretty boxy, and it always reminded me of a big old refrigerator going through the air down the racetrack out there, and that's never an aerodynamic shape that you want to see.
That sounds like something someone would use for one of those Red Bull downhill kart races, honestly. Teemu Toika, unfortunately, finding the wall, it looks like, coming through the last chicane. Is he going to send it into pit lane? No, he's going to stay out. Laust Olsen will, however, as we take a look at the replay. He was side by side. I think that might be with Sintez Galindo there next to him. And as they come into the braking, again, too wide into these heavy braking zones just doesn't work, and the two come together.
Unfortunate to see, and I've mentioned it a few times, there's only a few areas that you can really get away with side-by-side passing here on the racetrack, and even then it has to be well coordinated between the two. And I actually want to jump back to this GTO lead battle because Kurt Krum has officially caught Yuka Leskala.
Wow. So Leskala is going to find himself maybe in a bit of trouble once they get to the Dadi-Nurhoa, which I think is coming up soon. Yes, it is. This is through the Beloff S's. And once they reach the Dadi-Nurhoa, it's flat out. And basically, if you want to pass, you can sort of situation. But it's up to whether or not Krum wants to maybe just kind of cling to the back of that car and not necessarily hold the track position. Because that game can be played right back. Leskala could just hang around behind the number 13, wait to the last lap.
He certainly could, and it's not a bad strategy. My only thing is, at the Nurburgring, I would rather be out front with my own destiny, just in case that car in front hits a curb or does anything sketchy. But look at this. Kurt Krum using the slipstream. He's officially side by side with Leskala. He's going to drive right on by, doing 170 miles an hour.
Is this too early, though? Because look at this. It's so long. Leskala's now back in his slipstream, and he's going to pull it right back on him. Goes around as they fly through the Antonius Beach kink. He has got it up ahead, so maybe Krum is going to have to take a lesson from that one. If you want the lead, give it a bit and then attack.
I always say it. Take the notepad out. Get some notes down. Learn. Apply it to make yourself better.
Back onto the GP course once again to start lap 3 of this 8-lap race. So Leskala has been at the point since pretty much the start of it. We've only lost what looks like 3 cars so far. Till Beme, Yuri Giesen, and I think Richard Schmitz has unfortunately been stuck in pit lane taking repairs. He might get back out, so it might only be 2 that are out of this race. Olsen was able to take some repairs and return to the track. So did Theo Schleray. And a couple of the GTO cars have come in to bang away at that sheet metal and return. Fabian Jungbluth has got the car on track, but the bad news for him is he's actually also behind the GTO cars, which means they're not going to see blue flags when he approaches to try and go past them.
No, but I would say that if you're trying to go for a points championship, Joe, Fabian is doing the good thing. And if you're coming from a driver's perspective or an engineer's perspective, use this as testing. Go get practice laps. Learn about the race car, because the more laps you do, the better.
Top 3 still in a clump. They're starting to pull away from Marco Lay. It's about 3 seconds back that 4th place driver. So really showing their pace, especially here on the GP course, as they come through the kink up to the chicane. A little bit far apart for them to maybe see some attacks into here, especially on this quicker version of it. But that will mean that they'll probably be stuck in this position unless someone makes a major mistake here for a decent portion of the Nordschleife until they get out of Flugplatz.
It'll be interesting to see how Yuka Leskala really controls this race. It seems like these other 2 cars might be a little bit faster on the back half of the Nordschleife, especially when you get down to the furthest down section here on the racetrack. It seems like Leskala struggles a little bit. Or is he just managing the tires and kind of learning the racetrack? Remember, he knows these cars very well.
Absolutely. Multiple championships to his name. As we come a little farther back to Ian Haycox, it's Andreas Schuster that's chasing him now instead of Del Olmo. Del Olmo's actually already gotten past and is up the road as we watch the onboard cam of Haycox here. Here's where we're going to get some air. Watch this. Just scary stuff. Very few cars actually do that here in iRacing, but this is definitely one of them. The 49 probably gets the most of any of them, absolutely launching about 4 or 5 feet into the air.
It's a classic racetrack, and that's, I think, one of the reasons why people love it so much is that It's on your edge of the seat all of the time, up over crests, over these bumps, over jumps really, down these hills, avoiding curbs. It's just got everything out there for you.
Love seeing the footwork here, because you might be noticing there is only one foot down there. If you're new to Camel, that's because Ian only has 1 foot, as he recently had an accident where one had to be amputated, and has not let it slow him down at all. So he currently sits in 6th position and is not too far behind Del Olmo and Marco Lay that he could get involved there. We'll see what the slipstream holds for them. But for now, he's been defending on Schuster, who's been really hassling that car.
I always love seeing these Ian Haycock shots. It blows my mind what he's able to do out there, and really in such a short amount of time, just being able to pick it all back up like it's nothing.
Absolutely. He does have a special rig, obviously, that has his throttle mapped to that, and his foot handles the brake and the clutch down there on the other side. But he's got a somewhat damaged and very close Nissan liveried Audi just behind him, the 21, continuing to put the pressure on as they fly through Defense Valley. Thankfully, neither of them having the same issues that we saw for Laust Olsen a little bit earlier. We haven't missed anything up at the front, so this is a good chance for us to try and give some love to these two who've certainly got a fascinating one going on.
Well, it actually looks like Kirk Crum has a run coming up to Yuka Leskala right now, and we're going to jump over to Ove Trengrade going down the back straightaway with these GTP cars. This is 4th position going down into this braking zone. This is where it starts getting narrow, and I think Trengrade's around, both of them around, the 24 as well.
Oh, so they both clatter into the wall, but Timothy Reed is the one you saw split the middle and bravely take the positions. I say bravely because either of those cars could have bounced back onto the track. So that's P5 for Reed, and Trengrade unfortunately must have gotten too much damage. He's having to pit in. So is Humphrey. Oh, that is a real shame.
It is a real shame, but I gotta agree with the overall strategy. You know, we're working lap 4, and you gotta think this lap is so long. What if you go a couple corners and it's really not how you want it to drive, and you gotta suffer through that entire thing? Take your pill, make your bed, get on with the race.
Now, the other thing that we have to remember is that I believe this is a race with a scheduled pit stop. So maybe that's them saying, okay, now is as good a time as any to try and take advantage of that, get some repairs done, get fuel, tires, get back out there. We're watching the battle for the lead as Crum has lost 2nd place to Roger once again. So the number 1 car back into P2.
Yeah, looks like I know that they're just kind of hopping around here. I'll have to go back and double check on exactly where Roger got around, but these cars are on the Nordschleife again, and that's where we've really seen the top 3 mix it up, and then ultimately those passes going back and forth down the straightaway. But here on this section of the racetrack, it really seems to be any one of these top 3 cars' game.
Halfway through this race, and we have got a real thriller here at the front of the GTOs. Not often we get to say that, although I will say that Del Olmo for a while was really challenging Leskala with pace at a few races, but for many seasons it's been Leskala kind of just trouncing the field. And there's just a handful of drivers that have been able to keep up with him from time to time. Over the crest of Flans Garden, where they once again get air. And as they come down the hill into the Beloff S's, man, you can see how light they get. The car's just kind of jostling as they try and find grip.
They almost look like hovercrafts out there, don't they, Joe?
Yeah, this is certainly not modern technology with it glues the cars to the road. They're just dancing around everywhere, and it takes a brave driver to try and compete out here. Brave enough, I should say. Real-world drivers, definitely a lot more guts to try and take a vehicle to the Nurburgring. But here we go. It's back to the Dottinger Hoa once again, and let's see who is going to try and overtake and who's going to sit patiently behind their rival.
Yeah, so last lap, it was Crum that got around Leskala. Leskala just kind of cruised right on by Crum with that reverse slipstream, if you want to call it, or double draft. And yeah, it certainly looks like Christensen's kind of hanging out for the first half of this straightaway, but look at this. Crum has got a huge head of steam.
He's going to take advantage of it, while it looks like Roger's going to be content to sit behind, so maybe he knows the deal. Kurt this time is going to get by both of them, and he's going to get the track position. But he's made passes like this before. Remember, he tried that on Roger and had quite a challenge back on him coming into the first corner. So is this what Yuko's going to do as well? Is he going to try and make an attack down into the first chicane?
And it's a really heavy braking zone down into turn 1. I think Yuko's just a little bit too far back to really make a super send, but looks like, yeah, Crum is going to hang on to the lead for now.
I think while we're on the GP course, why don't we take a quick glance at our leader in the GTPs? I want to give some love to Hugh Haycox because it is 12 seconds to Iamaki. This guy has got this track nailed down and has just been leaving the field in his dust.
Agreed, and it's a great car to highlight too, and I think it's great driving because when these drivers set their mind to a racetrack, they want to perfect it, and lots of drivers look at this racetrack in particular as kind of the Mount Everest to climb. We saw earlier 15 plus miles, and if you can master this racetrack and know every single corner, look at the gap you can pull on the competition.
Yeah, it's looking pretty monstrous. And it's not all that much longer of a race than is typical in this series, being one of their enduro rounds. So it's a pretty significant gap here halfway through. We jump a little farther back to the battle for 6th position. That's Michael de Turk at the front of it. Timothy Vaughn, who's somehow still running with an extremely damaged car. And then Xavier Sanchez sits in the 8th position, all of them trying to hound that P6 away from de Turk.
Yeah, this is a good battle, and yeah, you see some damage there on the Timothy Vaughn car, on the rear wing especially. Wonder if that's affecting any sort of top speed, but look at these GTP cars line astern through some of the bumpiest, narrowest sections of this racetrack.
Yeah, and these are not cars that you want getting air and jostling around and such. They want to be glued to the track with that those ground effects, try and keep them nice and suction cupped, quite literally, to the surface as we follow them down through Bruchen and towards the ice curve now. This is going to be a hard one for these cars where they're going to get a little bit light up over this crest.
I think another one of the parts that makes this so amazing following so closely is these cars really do rely on a lot of aerodynamic downforce, and when you're in that dirty air, it's not helping the car as it should.
Indeed, yeah, it makes it impressive that he's able to follow as closely as he is. Seems like de Turk is starting to drop them through this part of the track. Look at the distance he put between himself and Vaughn there. Some of that may be that straight line speed, because look at how bent that rear wing is on the number 22.
Yeah, it's got to be hurting it. I wonder how much, if it's hurting it more in the straightaways and helping it. Oh, no, it looks like Xavier Sanchez is actually going to get by Timothy Vaughn. I think Vaughn just got a little bit wide through that banked carousel, and up out of the racetrack he went. Yeah,
popped off of the banking, unfortunately, and that cost him the slipstream on Sanchez on top of it, right when he needed it down the Dottinger Hoa. So good night to the 22. He's slow in a straight line, and he doesn't have a friend to help him down the longest straight on the track. Haycox setting the fastest lap of the race. No shock there at a 7:08.3. My goodness. The next nearest car is 7:11 flat for Ardo Iamaki. This is just unbelievable pace. Matthias Hovdal pits in for his scheduled stop now. We'll see where that cycles him around once everybody else takes their service.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with Hugh Haycox just putting his foot down on the field right now and dominating this race. And jumping back up to this GTO battle, not a lot has changed. Crum held on through that entire GP track. Out onto the Nordschleife they go, but Jukka Leskala certainly looks like he's not letting go of our leader. And this was the area of the racetrack where Leskala was, I don't want to say off pace, but maybe the other two were a little bit faster. He certainly doesn't seem like he's lost anything, though.
No, not right now. This is coming up into the Lauda Kink here and into Bergwerks. So about halfway through the lap at this point. And then it's all uphill through here. Again, we saw this is where it's flat out for these cars for quite some time. So the slipstream maybe will have an effect. And Leskola is still right there. Does he attempt something on Kurt Krum? Will he continue to just stay behind? It does get a little sketchy since the track does weave back and forth through this portion, though.
You're right, it does get pretty narrow. I think it might be a little bit easier in the GTP cars through this specific section just with their aero grip, but look at how close Leskola is to the back of Krum.
He gained a lot, but he didn't want to risk going side by side, so he lifted a bit up the hill, and Roger seeming to drop somewhat on that run through Kesselchen. So he's going to have to gather that back up and try to get a little closer than that. And as I mentioned, we're past halfway in this race. So at some point, you got to start making moves. You got to start pushing. The question is mostly down to when. They also have Fabian Jungbluth coming up behind them soon. Hopefully, he's aware this is a battle for the lead and doesn't cause too much hassle for them.
Agreed. Yeah, we're going to have a GTP car, like you said, kind of enter the picture. And I think the one saving grace is they're on the kind of the back third of the Nordschleife, but this GTP car is going to want by. And here we see Fabian Jungbluth making it too wide, gets by Christensen just fine. And now he's got to be patient here as he approaches Leskola and Krum.
Yeah, he's already had to overtake plenty of the GTO cars up to here, so he kind of knows the deal by now of where he needs to place himself. And since he's not fighting anybody, it really doesn't serve him to try and be too antsy in this situation. There we go. Another little pass into between first and second, and another one to get him ahead of all of them. Now he's freed to try and chase down Martin Krajcik, the next one up the road. 2-minute difference between them, so I think it's unlikely, but you never know whether or not he can catch him. Launching over Flansgarden, Kurt Krum holds track position and leads this race.
One thing that the Fabian Jungbluth coming through really helped out was Roger Christensen. He was starting to tail off of these front two, but it's kind of brought him back into the picture for the lead.
Indeed it did. And Roger's probably appreciative of that. He'll take what he can get in this situation. Some drivers have been taking what they can get out there, and others have been unfortunately having to hand it over. A bit of love to Jamie Hamill-Smith in the 38 machine, up 7 positions from where he started in the GTO field. He has managed to get himself to 8th by now.
Yeah, good run for Jamie Hamill-Smith, like you were saying there. And we are out onto the straightaway. We're going to see who drafts who. We got Krum, Leskola, Christensen is the current order.
Will it stay in that order? Rogers got a little bit better toe on Yuko than Yuko on Krum, but they're all kind of squishing closer together as the draft allows them to gain time on the leader of Kurt Krum. Krum holding the left-hand side, drifting back across to the natural racing line. Some hesitation there from Leskola, and no, he's not going to try and overtake on Kurt Krum, at least this time. I have to check my stats. I'm trying to think if we've ever seen Kurt Krum have a win, and he's actually going to pit now. I assume this is going to be a scheduled stop for him. Maybe he just doesn't like giving the toe to those behind, and he figures I can have a better and easier race if I'm just running on my own.
Yeah, this could pay off, or it could have huge negative consequences, because if he comes out and gets stuck behind a slower GTO car, that could be race over for his lead.
Remember, I've been talking about Timothy Vaughn. He's lost touch with Sanchez and Turk, but Cintas Galindo's catching back up with him. Patrick Silvazzi is also starting to catch up here as we watch them come out of the carousel. This is a pretty big uphill climb here to get to the highest point on Hedwig's Heights. And then it's all going to be downhill from there for the lap. And looks like Timothy Vaughn might have to play defense again, because we've already seen he's struggling in a straight line. Can he hold these guys back before he gets to the pit stop? I'm surprised that the 22 hasn't come into pit, because surely he has to know by now that he's losing time on the long straights.
Agreed. I totally agree with you. And, the one counterpoint I've got to it is that if you come in with a strategy and you want to execute that strategy and you say, hey, you know what? The car's driving fine. It's just a little down on top end speed. You can convince yourself to keep on your strategy. And I just think that's what we're seeing out of Timothy Vaughn.
Yeah, that's a fair point. It's usually traditionally in sports cars better to go long and lighten the car for as long as you can rather than topping up on fuel early. So maybe he's got that in mind, thinking he'll still be quicker in that sense. Through the Beloff S's, not enough time for Sintez Galindo to try and attack into there, but you saw how quickly he caught up to the rear wing of the 22. It's going to be a lot easier for him to overtake on the Dottie Hoa if he gets there. My goodness, incredibly fast through the twisty bits. That's where Timothy Vaughn is really making the difference here.
It seems like it may be hurting him on the top end, but through the corners, I don't know if it's just made the car more stable so he has confidence, but now that we're out onto the straightaway, I think we're going to see the negative effect.
Yep, they are reeling him in, and Sintez Galindo, as well as Zilvazi. Oh, is he going to try and pinch him? No, he's going to give him some space, but it's an easy pass along the Dottie Hoa, and there you go. Zilvazi gets a 2-for-1 going to 7th. I just saw Ardo Iamaki come down pit lane past us, so the 18 car is in. Zilvazi in the clear air under braking. Can he start to run away now? And when will we see some of these other drivers pit in themselves? Well, Zilvazi actually pits in now that he's got the clear air. And Vaughn finally admits defeat and come and
free to pull off into the pit stop there.
Indeed. That's it caught my eye because I saw, there's only 2. What happened? And thankfully, it was not an accident. Valescola and Christensen carry on. This looked like Rogers losing a little touch here, but we've seen that consistently. Like you said, Yuko seems to have just a much better grasp of this first part of the lap.
Agreed. And to note that Kurt Crum pit stop, I was actually checking up on him. He's not being held up by any car, so maybe this early pit stop to get out in clean air and do his own fast lap might work out for him. But you just got to remember that slipstream of following a car is still so powerful down that back straightaway. We'll see once these other 2 lead cars pit where everybody comes out in the cycle.
It's not many tracks that we talk about the Nissans having the effect of the slipstream, but the ground effects, they really don't see it that dramatically like the Audis do. So when you get to a place like this where they can pull from so far behind, it's a long straight. Christensen here. Now back by about roughly 1 second on Leskola. That will still tow him in at the speeds they reach. He can feel the effects from 1 second behind, but he doesn't want to get too much farther than that back. If he reaches about 1.5 to 2 seconds, then he's in the danger zone.
Agreed. Yeah, he's right on that edge right now, and coming up this uphill, he wishes he was probably a little bit closer than what he was, and you got to be careful. Don't get too aggressive into this upcoming section. You kind of breathe as you're heavy on the throttle, but let me tell you, it starts to get busy really fast up here, including this super banked carousel.
Yeah, if they come across traffic in there, then you're almost guaranteed to lose time. Trying to see how far away we are from seeing traffic for the top of the GTPs. And it does seem like it's still a little ways off, but I do think they're going to catch some of the back of the Audi field before this race is over. It's the leaders that probably aren't going to have to worry about that, and we'll have that extra lap to go. 1.2 seconds now. Roger, again, is looking like he's got to be slightly concerned about this and is going to have to push a little harder to make sure that Yuko doesn't cut off the draft for him.
Agreed, and I'm looking at these sector times, and I know that they not really have fallen off much, but I think Yuko is really on a heater right now. He's almost a second up on his previous lap, which was dang close to his fastest lap so far.
All right, as they swing downhill into Brunchen once again, been nicknamed YouTube Corner for a lot of people tending to take video here and getting, unfortunately for many cars, a lot of wrecks on footage and posting it to YouTube. But these two are going to make it through safely. And here it is. Roger gains in a ton of time just in this section alone. It's down to 0.6 of a second. So maybe he doesn't need to be all that worried after all. And once he gets to the Dodinger Hoa, this is going to be a good distance for him. In fact, this might be about the right distance. This might slingshot him.
Agreed. I'd want to maybe get a little bit closer just to secure it, but he was almost 1.5 seconds back, and now he's cut that all the way under a half second behind Leskala. He just needs to hit his marks through these final couple crucial corners, and most importantly, nail the exit out onto the straightaway.
Well, that's coming soon. They're coming up the Gallows Hill here. And just a little bit of a flick, and then feather the throttle as you try and fight the understeer of this Audi all the way onto the Dodinger Hoa. That's very, very close. That's down to 0.3 of a second now for Christensen. This will be a slam dunk if he wants to go by. But they're going to get.
He's too close again, Joe. Kind of repeat of lap 1.
And it's going to be 2 laps to go. Nope. He's not going to take the bait. He's going to sit behind.
I think that notepad came out, he saw, and that's exactly what we're seeing. He was just way too close entering the straightaway, and he's just kind of hanging out waiting right now.
Now, the scary thing's going to be is surely it's going to be a fight all the way down to that last chicane, Tiergarten and Hohenrad at the end of this on that last lap, because they both know it at this point. We know that they're aware of the situation. So that is either going to take some skill and some bravery to make work, or they could cause each other an accident and allow someone like Kurt Krum to just laugh his way on by. Speaking of which, these two do still need to pit, if I believe our estimations are correct.
Yes, they do. I'm looking at it. Neither one of these cars has pitted. They both started lap 6, current lap stint 6, and got a big lockup from our leader, Leskala, headed down into turn 1. I think he's definitely feeling the pressure from that number 1 machine behind him.
Yeah, he's experiencing it, but Yuko's had that before. Even though he has run away sometimes, we've seen him just stand up to incredible pressure in the past. And since we're not as familiar with Roger, we don't know how much he can really lay it on, or if he's going to have to try other methods to dislodge him. As we got a problem. Is that Silvazzi there? It is indeed.
Yeah, get a look at this replay here. See exactly what happened. He was running, if I remember, like up in the 5th to 7th place range, and oh no, just clipped the grass too far outside driver's left, and no catching it from there.
Did he even get the grass, though? It looked like he barely touched the curb, if anything. No, you're right. That is the grass. Good call. And that sent him out. And like I said, that corner is known for a lot of accidents in real life. And, well, even in the sim, it'll catch people out.
I'll give it to you. I think even if there wasn't grass there, he was just too far out driver's left, plus up over that crest, just the car was all sorts of out of shape.
Michael the Turk pits in. Hugh Haycox, Antti Lepisto, Timothy Reed. Remember, we saw Ardo Iamaki pit early. Where is this going to position him? Hugh Haycox is back out onto the track, so Iamaki won't get that spot. What about Antti Lepisto? He is going to go past Antti Lepisto. Iamaki back into second place. In fact, Lepisto's a long way behind. Hovdal goes by him. Hovdal now moves into third. And De Turk needs to take his service as Lepisto finally returns in P4 where he started this race.
Yeah, looks like for the most part, actually it looks like all of the GTP cars now have officially made their pit stop. So the cycle is done, it is complete, and as they're running right now. Look at that, still a 15-second gap for Hugh Haycox.
Yeah, just basically been schooling everybody out there. As long as he keeps it safe and brings it home, he should be good. And yeah, everybody in the prototype field has visited pit lane at least once. We do need Fabian Jungbluth to come in. Maybe? No, well, it was 5 laps ago. He may have been right on the verge. No, wait, he had the connection issue. That's what it was. It wasn't a wreck for him. So Jungbluth is essentially doing a bit of a strange strategy. No, he's on the lead lap, actually.
Yeah, he is on the lead lap. I think he took that tow. He's worked his way up through the GTO field and just trying to salvage some points. You're right. He probably has to come into pit here this before the end of the race, but not going to affect him in terms of position.
Yeah, exactly. So my brain was getting there. Just it took a bit to figure out the exact situation for the 16 car. I'm sure he's having to do some calculations himself to try and make sure that he finishes this race correctly without running out of fuel. Out of Metzgefeld and down into the valley one more time. Roger right on top of Yuko Leskala as the drivers work their way past Callenhard and into the Spiegel curve. Looks like Miss Hit Miss is going to keep them honest as they try and make sure that they don't run wide out of there. But man, Christensen now within basically a car length of Yuko Leskala on this part of the lap. They still need to take a pit stop. In fact, those two and then Ian Haycox are the only ones remaining in the GTOs that need service.
I don't know if I'm seeing this right, but I think Yuka's on a really slow lap right now. It could be timing and scoring off, but I'm seeing almost 5 seconds down on this lap. And look at this. We're actually going to get Christensen taking a look down the inside here, and they're going to be going up into this uphill section, which is famous for the slipstream.
Yeah, you're right. I'm seeing the same thing. 6 seconds for both of them being off the race pace. I don't think you can go to the end without taking a pit stop. But if they're close on fuel, that seems like such a critical error. Like, why would you risk that when there's such a narrow window around here? And well, narrow window for a pass is unfortunately not going to be open enough. Roger's going to back out.
My only question is, I wonder if part of the strategy is they're counting on these GTP cars to lap them, and that might not happen. But yeah, now they're up to 6.5 seconds down on this lap, and I'm looking at the number 13 Kurt Crum machine. As long as he stayed on pace, he's looking pretty good.
Indeed. And right now, our leaders in the prototypes are actually, they have caught and passed a number of our GTOs. So there he is right there. That is Hugh Haycox, still at about 20 seconds ahead of the nearest car. So he's been gobbling them up. In fact, he's passed about fifth with Andres Schuster currently. And he should be able to, I want to say, yeah, I think he should be able to lap them by the time this is over. They're only going to have one more lap, but there he is right there in the same camera shot of Andreas. Kurt Crum's only up the road by about 8 seconds. Yeah, you might be right that Leskala and Christensen might not want to try and get this extra lap here.
I think that's exactly what's happening. Either that or they both just totally miscalculated on fuel and are having to save to even get home.
They're currently 8 seconds off their best time now. It's continuing to drop, having to fuel save quite a bit. It's just that Ian Haycox is not having to do the same, and he's about 8 seconds back. He's about a second and a half off of his best time. That's not nearly enough to really justify. I'd expect maybe 4 or 5 seconds off of his best time if he's also having to fuel save to make it. So this has been a bit strange from the leaders. We'll get answers when they come up to the start-finish line, because if they don't pit, then, well, they're trying to stretch it for some strange reason. But if they do pit, then I'd say this was just fuel miscalculation.
Yeah, and you mentioned Ian Haycox there. You're right. He is on a lap, and the only thing that I can think of is maybe Yuka Leskala had a big mistake early on in the lap that we missed, and it caused that 4 to 5 second gap, and then he just hasn't really been on his rhythm. But it still is continuing to grow, Joe. It's up 8 seconds now.
All right, onto the Dottie Narahoa. This will really suck up the fuel here. And for reference, Hugh Haycox is just coming up towards the mini carousel. So that's probably about 16 seconds behind them at this stage. There's the move. Christensen going to go on by. Leskala doesn't fight it. Can't really fight it, honestly, as they head up the hill towards the kink. And they're still at about 8 seconds ahead of Ian Haycox behind them. In fact, I couldn't quite see him there, but some of that was due to the hill here on this portion of the track. Questions will hopefully be answered in just a moment as they come up towards the pit entry here. Roger Christensen up one position from where he started. Leskala down one, and one is pitting, one is not. Leskala is going to risk trying to go to the end.
Here it is. Here's the fuel call, and something to keep an eye on. Hugh Haycox, our overall leader, was on the same straightaway. So even though that Yuka Leskala is looking at 2 laps to go right now, he's actually only going to have 1 more lap to go because Hugh is going to pass him here in a matter of a few corners.
Yeah, there you see the final lap up on your screen now. And yeah, he's close enough, absolutely, that he can overtake him. What about Kurt Crum in regards to Roger Christensen? Where is that going to wind up? Christensen's just out of the pits, but Crum has passed him. And the question is he out of the slipstream range? No, he's within about a second.
Yeah, looks like Christensen did what he needed to do, and he can attach himself to the back of Crum here. Looking at it about 1.1, 1.2 seconds. He's got to make up a good GP circuit here.
There is your number 1. What? Wow, I did not think that the GTOs would be able to do this. This is some incredible fuel saving there from Leskala. And maybe that's what Roger was doing there, is trying to do the same thing as him, but just couldn't save the same amount of fuel as Yuko.
I agree, but when you come into a race with a strategy like that, you know it from the beginning. And if you're Roger, you can't really change midway through. And if Yuka had been fuel saving, that could have been one of the reasons why those other 2 cars were able to stay in touch, because we know how fast Yuko is.
Absolutely. The thing is, if Yuko's tight on that fuel, if he's barely going to make it, then it's only 25, 26 seconds. So he can't really sputter on the way up the Dottinger-Hoa because that's uphill. He's going to be at a severe disadvantage. In fact, might not make it to the line if he sputters before he gets that last chicane there. So Kurt Crum and Roger Christensen are still in with a shout, but it requires Yuko to have gotten his math just a little bit wrong.
Agreed. And yeah, Christensen is officially on the back of Kurt Crum. And something to note about this battle, I'm seeing more and more of our lead GTP cars make their way through. So that might be a variable throughout the rest of this. So probably 5.5 minutes on this lap.
Yeah, that's a good point. That could affect it as well. And you got to wonder if Yuko's taking that into account, because if he's going to have to go offline and do all kinds of strange strategies, strange racing lines in that way, then that could suck up his fuel a little more. Whoa, look at the jump there from Christensen, getting the nose in the air. And there's a clip of the curb as well for Kurt Crum, as he is pushing at 10 tenths. These two have the fuel, and they are trying to rush this one to the finish.
Yeah, I think most importantly, you said they have the fuel, so there's no saving whatsoever between these 2 competitors out here. And they've been running in the top 3 all race. Each one of these cars has led laps, and we'll see who can really finish out this last half of the Nordschleife as they go down this huge hill for the last time.
These 2 are able to slipstream off of each other, but Leskala is not able to save off of anybody himself. So has he taken that into account, that he doesn't have someone in front of him to help stretch that fuel any farther, as he's already about 7 seconds down, and I see about 22 seconds. So we'll keep that gap. That's going to be the real tell there, as Yuko losing time to Kurt Crum and Roger Christensen. His best hope is that these 2 battle too much and really hold each other up, or just take each other out.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to see who else. I think that there might be 2 more GTP cars, really even 3 more GTP cars going all the way back to Ian Haycox that will catch this GTO battle. So trust me, it is not over yet.
I'm also keeping an eye on Hugh Haycox. He's still got half a lap to go, though, in the number 5, but he's about 24 seconds ahead. This could be monster gaps in both classes, or maybe just a huge gap in the GTPs, and things will dwindle down in the GTOs as Leskala tries to stretch his fuel to ungodly lengths. It's down to 19 seconds. Yeah, he's suffering a bit here. Yuko is having to do some fancy footwork out there to try and get to the end of the race as we continue to watch Lepisto here in fourth position, trying to chase down Matthias Hovdal. But Hovdal has had the legs in terms of the best lap pace, but as of lately, checking out the times, hard to say, actually, because last lap was a pit stop for Lepisto, so that hurts our read on that. So hard, I don't know exactly if he's quicker, and if so, how much.
Yeah, and I'm looking, oh yeah, the GTP cars are starting to snake through this second place battle of the GTO stuff, and oh, Kurt Krum a little bit outside there, but looks like everything's still stationary here in the battle. And it's funny how the pieces come together on race strategy, Joe. You know, we were watching Yuka, and we were mentioning how slow he is in some of these sections of the racetrack, but now that I go back and look at it, it was all the downhill sections of the racetrack. What does that tell you? He's off the gas since the beginning.
Wow, that is incredibly clever on the part of Yuko Leskala. Let gravity do its thing. Save yourself some fuel. Good catch there, Joey. That if this works, then that's a big brain move from Yuko Leskala, no doubt. He's still at about 18 seconds ahead as we watch Lepisto swing it across, kicking up dust towards the end of the lap here. But he's way behind our leader, Hugh Haycox, who is now coming up to Gallows Hill. It's the end of the lap here for the number 5. I asked whether or not he can come back and use his speed to overcome some bad luck. I'd say getting that clear air at the beginning definitely helped, but from there, Hugh Haycox, as he comes onto the Dottie Nurhoa, has basically made good on his pace and has not let anybody get close to touching him.
Yeah, definitely. I see him. Looks like, yeah, he is coming down the straightaway for the final time. I know that this is the last lap here. Just one more big brake zone to hold it together for Hugh Haycox.
He currently resides in France, but he's an Englishman and is just over there for studies. But for today, he is going to conquer Germany. In the meantime, it's going to be a win at the Nurburgring for Hugh Haycox in the prototypes here at the first round of the Camel GT series.
And checking out Yuka Leskala, he is just pulling over to the side of the racetrack to let whoever comes up on him by. He's already 12 seconds down on his previous lap. He's just coming up to the top of the hill. This is the highest point in elevation that he's got until the checkered flag. But let me tell you, Joe, this is a very long straightaway, and I think Kurt Krum is already down to 15 seconds back. Hold your breath here, boys.
I'm riding on board myself to listen to Leskala, to hear if he sputters, because this will be the time that you hear it, if it's going to be close. So far, so good. As he climbs up the hill, 150 miles an hour, foot to the floor. I'm not hearing any hesitation or soft shoeing on this one. It is down to about 13 seconds to Kurt Krum, but that's too little, too late. As, ooh, there's a wreck in front of him. Not sure what that's about. Looks like that's going to clear up. But as he comes around through the last part of the lap, there it is. It's the car just in front. Yeah, the Turk had a problem. No problem with the fuel. That is a win for Yuko Leskala with a no-stopper. I did not expect that today.
What a strategy out of the number 2 car. And here comes the second and third place already across the line. Kurt Krum, second place. Roger Christensen, third. They caught up to Yuka almost a dozen seconds that last lap.
So Deturk got a bit of a contact from Aaron Humphrey as they were battling for 7th place, and that's what caused that. And unfortunately, it put Laust Olsen off the course as well. But as you said, Krum with a second, Christensen with a podium there in third, but it just wasn't meant to be. Iamaki and Hovdal rounding out the podium over there in the prototypes. That's going to take us to a quick break. We'll come back with the official results as well as driver interviews after this. welcome back. We just saw the first round of the Camel GT series here at the Nurburgring of all places, and this man, Hugh Haycox, took the victory in the prototypes. Iamaki was a massive 24 seconds behind there in P2, and Matthias Hovdahl rounded out the podium in third. Antti Lepisto had to settle for fourth where he began this race despite looking quick at times. Timothy Reed gained a lot of spots, 13th to 5th. Xavier Sanchez did something similar, 11th to 6th place, as Aaron Humphrey got in a little trouble there at the end with the Turk. He still managed to bring the car home in 7th, as Laust Olsen had to avoid that accident and crawled into 8th. Timothy Vaughn was 9th ahead of De Turk, who unfortunately lost multiple positions with that late wreck, rounding out the top 10. Aitor Sintez Galindo, despite having 2 championships to his name, doesn't seem to really be all that great this season at the start. He only finishes 11th. Maybe he can turn that around. Ove Trangrade was 12th, followed by Seamus Power in P13 and Eduardo Roca in the 14th position. Clayton McLeod, 7 gained from 22nd to 15th. Nicely done. Theo Schlore had the reverse, 2nd down to 16th. His reasoning was he did not practice enough post-race when he talked to the group. Jukka Tolinen was 17th as Martin Krejcik finished P18, and Fabian Jungbluth was the last of the drivers to finish in the prototypes there in 19th. Everybody from there on down was DNFs. Let's take a look at the GTO field here, Joey.
Yeah, we have our winner, Jukka Leskala, there in the number 2 machine with that amazing fuel strategy, the no pit stop strategy out of that car. Pretty crazy to pull that one off and still have an 11-second gap over the second place running car, Kurt Krum in the number 13. Then you have Roger Christensen, who's always in the top 3 all race in the final podium spot. Andreas Schuster in 4th, Ian Haycox rounding out the top 5. There you have Kevin Parsh in the 6th position, Jamie Hummel-Smith 7th, Doug Cloud 8th, Carlos Fonseca 9th, and John Sipt in the 10th spot. Daniel Orpetto there in the 11th position, Edu Vila a few laps down, and everybody else once again had problems further down that. Mark Ole, Javier Del Olmo, Adrian Zurita, and Yuri Gieson.
That's going to take us to our winner here today, Hugh Haycox, who, as I said, had incredible pace. But Hugh, if ever there's a track where you want track position, I'd say this is one of them. Do you feel like that pole position and being able to break the slipstream played a significant part in this one?
Yeah, pole position really helps because you just get you get a 0.1 second gap before turn 1 every time. But yeah, I think I was quite a bit quicker than a bit quicker than most other people, but
it certainly looked like you had the speed. I mean, in the end, you wound up 25 seconds ahead of second place. You definitely had to deal with that traffic towards the end. Were you kind of just taking your time since you had such a huge gap to try and be extra careful and not throw it away?
Yeah, traffic was pretty good. Couple people just not very obvious, but yeah, it was pretty all right considering we only go through them once. Generally, the first time is the hardest, and then people realise that, oh yeah, there's another class. But no, everyone was pretty good. I took my time, knew I had a gap, so no worries.
Well, it's a good start to the season. Will you have the time, though, to compete for a championship here, or is this going to be another part-timer for you like last time?
Hopefully I have time, yeah. It'd be quite good to do the whole season this time.
All right, well, we'll look out for you, and congratulations to kick it off with a win.
Thank you.
So there you go. Hugh Haycox taking the victory in the number 5. And up next, I believe Joey has caught up with Laust Olsen, who also had a pretty good run here today in the prototypes, but a bit messy at places.
It definitely an event-filled race is what I would call it, Joe. Standing by with Laust Olsen here, finishing position number 8. Now, we usually reference the Nurburgring and doing so much practice, but you were out there in the middle of a GTP mess. How was that, having so many cars that you were racing with?
Quite hectic. My race pace wasn't exactly where I wanted it to be, so I could barely keep up with the guys in front, and then couldn't really get away from those behind. So that was a lot of pressure.
Well, and then talk me through a little bit. I know that your car got banged up a little early on, and it was just some really good racing, and that racetrack is just so narrow. Anytime you try to go too wide, it really requires cooperation from both parties, doesn't it?
Yeah, one of those in front of me had crashed or was going slow, and while I was trying to go by him and not hit him, then I plain and simple forgot where I was on the track and missed the next braking point, so I slid wide and hit the barrier. So yeah, that was on me entirely. Just lost track of where I was.
Now, the Nurburgring is a huge, famous racetrack, and every driver kind of approaches it differently. Do you like the challenge that is this racetrack, or do you like the more traditional circuits that you go to?
I definitely like this track. It's fun to drive. Perhaps more fun to hot lap than to race, but even races tend to be quite fun also. I definitely like the more challenging tracks. Gives you something to. Yeah, you got your hands full all the time.
Definitely have your hands full all the time, and I know that we're looking to see you racing the rest of the season. And before I let you go, is there anybody that you want to say hi to?
Yeah, thank you, you guys, for the great broadcast you do, and thank you to the community for being a great bunch of racers. Yeah, I think that's it.
Well, that was Laust Olsen, your 8th place finisher here in the GTP class, Joe.
We also have Heitor Sintes Galindo, who was 11th today. And Heitor, I have to ask, because we're used to you running a little bit higher up. Is this a bit of a bogey track for you? Do you consider it not as one of your strengths?
Yes, actually, you're right. It's one of my bogey tracks. Let's say that in this kind of races in the Nordschleife, I just try to finish the race, no matter what the position. So yeah, it's a bit disappointing results-wise, but actually I'm glad that I actually finished the race because I wasn't so sure. But yeah, for me it wasn't, it's an actual correct result for me, satisfied. But yeah, let's move on to the next race, for me at least.
Well, and the next one's going to be a lot of fun because it's a new track here on the service, Manicourt. Have you had a chance to run this car there yet?
Actually, I haven't tried the course yet. I actually remember from 2008. That track is really fun to drive. It will be a really good find in Nissan. Unfortunately, I'm gonna miss this week because I'm gonna have to travel to my hometown to visit my family, who is actually watching right now. So I have to miss this one, but I'm looking forward to the next one. Will be, I think it's Indianapolis. But yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah, we'll be sad to miss you, but I guess that's why we have the drop weeks here, because it is going to be a holiday weekend next weekend. Still, great job bringing it home. I understand your feeling of just finishing a Nurburgring race is the main goal. So well done, sir.
Thank you, Joe. So yeah, see you, thanks guys, and see you on Indy.
All right, so it'll be a bit of a break for Heitor Sintes Galindo, who finished 11th today. That's going to wrap up our interviews, though, so a big thank you goes out to the Kamel GT community for bringing us back for another season of coverage. Thanks to the team today, Joey, Rob, and Dougie. Make sure to check out our social media, website, and merchandise store. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a moment here on GSRC. The next race, as we mentioned, Manicourt, is going to be Saturday, December 24th. It'll be Christmas Eve for that one, Christmas Eve morning at noon Eastern. And be sure to check out our other broadcasts listed here. But until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.